She had $1 billion fortune and a world of glittering lies. He was the humble gateman who offered her something real. But what she doesn't know is that his secret is far bigger than her inheritance, and it's about to unravel everything. Follow their story to see if love can survive the ultimate deception. The groan of the heavy iron gate was the first real sound of home for Anna Harrison. It was a sound that meant leaving the chaos of Lagos behind for the manicured perfection of her family's estate. She'd been dreaming of this moment for 3 years, but now that it was here, it felt strange. This time, something was different. Anna was a really good architect, her head full of smart designs and her heart missing home. She'd just gotten back from 3 years in the UK. She'd missed the smell of Nigeria, that mix of rain-soaked dirt and hibiscus flowers. London was all grey stone and a constant damp chill, but this was life in full colour. The Harrison estate was its own little world, a bubble of perfection. Think big white walls that seemed to touch the sky, perfect lawns that looked like green velvet, and a staff that ran like clockwork. It was a life of serious privilege, and the older Anna got, the weirder it felt, like she was living in a beautiful, gilded cage. Her dad, a man who just filled up a room with his presence, was out of town on business as usual, but her mom and sister were there to put on the welcome home show. Mrs. Harrison, who was all about social status and fancy clothes, gave Anna a quick, cool hug that barely touched her. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned Anna's comfy travel clothes. "Anna, darling, you look tired. We have to get you settled. The Adebayos are having a gala on Saturday and you have to look perfect. I've already laid out the blue dress for you." Her younger sister, Ivy, was a ball of energy, already trying to get a selfie with her, pouting her lips for the camera. "Anna, welcome back. My friends are here. You have to see the new pool cabana Dad built. It's got a built-in sound system and everything." She didn't seem to notice tired lines around Anna's eyes, only how her return could accessorize her own social life. Through all the greetings and the staff grabbing her bags, Anna's eyes drifted to the gate. There was a new gateman. He stood tall and calm, his posture straight and dignified in a way that had nothing to do with his simple uniform. You could just tell he was strong, not just in his body, but in his stillness. But it was his eyes that got her. They were steady and smart, with a kind of depth you wouldn't expect. They weren't empty or bored like some of the other staff. They were watchful, taking everything in. He gave her a small, respectful nod before getting back to work, his movements efficient and sure. "Who's that?" Anna asked, her voice quiet, almost to herself. Ivy barely looked, already scrolling through her phone. "Oh, just the new gateman. Eric, I think. He's been here a few months, a little too serious if you ask me. Never smiles." But Anna saw something else. In a house where everything felt like a performance, this guy seemed completely refreshingly real. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just there. Solid. She just couldn't shake the feeling that he was different. He was like a quiet, steady note in a house full of noise. Seeing him for the first time was like finding a wildflower growing through a crack in a marble floor, totally unexpected, strong, and beautiful. The next afternoon, the estate was buzzing with Ivy's friends, a flock of brightly colored birds chattering and laughing. Music with a heavy bass line bounced off the pool water as they all floated around on giant inflatable swans, gossiping about fashion, parties, and who was dating whom. Anna was at a table in the shade, sketching in her notepad, just trying to find some peace and quiet in the middle of the chaos. She felt a million miles away from these girls, whose biggest concern was which filter to use on their next Instagram post. She watched Ivy, who loved being the center of attention, hold court. To impress her friends, she snapped her fingers sharply in the air. "Eric!" she yelled, her voice dripping with an entitlement that made Anna's skin crawl. Eric was trimming the hedges near the pool house, the rhythmic snip-snip of his shears the only peaceful sound. He straightened up, setting his tools down carefully before he walked over, his face impossible to read. "Yes, Miss Ivy." "My bag," Ivy said, pointing a lazy finger toward the house without even looking at him. "I left it in the lounge. The pink one with the gold chain. Go get it for me." Anna cringed so hard she almost dropped her pencil. It was a simple enough request, but her tone was all wrong. It was an order, a casual display of power meant to show everyone who was boss. The other girls just watched, a few of them giggling, amused by the little power play. Eric didn't move. He stood there for a beat, his gaze level. His voice was low and steady, not a hint of anger in it, but it was as solid as a rock. "I'm the gateman, Miss Ivy, not the houseboy," he said. "The porters are inside. I can call one for you." Wow, you could have cut the tension with a knife. The music seemed to fade into the background. Ivy's face turned a blotchy, beet red. She was so embarrassed, and you could tell her pride was stung, big time. To be publicly refused, even so politely, was a humiliation she couldn't handle. "Are you refusing to do what I ask?" she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "My job is to secure the gate and the grounds," Eric said calmly, his voice never wavering. "That's what your father hired me for." Before things could get any worse, Anna stood up, her own face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. "Ivy, that's enough," she said, her voice tight. "I'll get your bag." She walked past Eric, not meeting his eyes, and went inside. The way her sister could be so casually cruel, and the quiet, unshakable dignity of man she tried to put down, it all left a bad taste in Anna's mouth. The invisible lines between class and power had been drawn right there in the open, and Anna knew which side she was on. That tension stuck around long after the party, a low, unhappy hum in the fancy air of the Harrison home. As the sun went down, the garden got quiet, and the air filled with the sweet, heavy smell of jasmine. The day's heat began to fade, leaving a comfortable warmth behind. Anna was wandering around, trying to escape the tense vibe in the house, when she found herself near the staff quarters, a modest but well-kept building tucked behind a curtain of bougainvillea. That's when she heard his voice, low and earnest. Eric was sitting on the steps with his back to her, talking on a simple, well-worn phone. She didn't mean to listen, but his words carried on the still evening air, and she couldn't help it. "No, Mama Funka, don't worry," he was saying, his voice warm with reassurance. "I'll send the money tomorrow, I promise. The children have to start the new term with everyone else. Tell them to buy their books, yes, all of them, and new sandals for little Toby. His are falling apart. It's a small thing." Anna froze, her heart giving a little squeeze. School fees? Books? New sandals for a specific child? For kids in some village she could only imagine? She was blown away. This was a kindness she never would have expected from someone who, let's be honest, probably didn't have much to spare. It was a quiet, personal act of love. She waited for him to hang up, the sound of crickets filling the sudden silence. "Eric," she said, stepping forward into the clearing. He turned, not startled, just with a slow, graceful movement. In the soft twilight, his features seemed less guarded. "Miss Anna, sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop," she said, feeling her cheeks get warm. "But I heard what you said about the school fees." He looked down at his hands, a little self-deprecating smile on his face. "It's a small thing," he said again, trying to brush it off as if it were nothing. "It doesn't sound small," she said gently. "It sounds like everything to those kids. That's an amazing thing to do." He finally met her eyes, and she saw a flicker of something real and unguarded in them. "An education is not a small thing," he corrected her softly, his voice full of conviction. "It's the only thing that can break a cycle. It's a foundation." That word, foundation, really stuck with her. As an architect, she got it, but he gave it a whole new meaning. They ended up talking for a long time, sitting there on the steps as the sky turned from purple to inky black. She learned he was from a small village in the east, that he loved to read, and that he believed in community. He talked about books, Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, even some philosophy, with a passion that totally surprised her. The conversation just flowed, like a river carving a path between their two different worlds. Walking back to the house under a sky full of stars, Anna knew she'd been right about him. Eric was so much more than just the gateman. He had a real story, and she wanted to know all of it. A few days later, Anna was driving back from a potential project site when her car just died. It sputtered, coughed, and that was it. She was on a quiet, tree-lined road, miles from anywhere. She tried to start it again, her frustration growing with each turn of the key. Nothing. She checked her phone. No signal. A knot of anxiety started twisting in her stomach. The road was empty, the sun was sinking fast, and the shadows of the trees were growing long and spooky. Just when she was about to give up hope and resign herself to a long night, she saw someone on a bicycle coming down the road, a steady, rhythmic pedaling. As the person got closer, her heart did a little jump. It was Eric. He pulled up, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. "Miss Anna, is everything all right?" "My car just stopped," she said. "I have no idea what's wrong with it." He leaned his bike against a tree and popped the hood. He knew exactly what he was doing, his hands moving with a quiet confidence as he checked the engine. Anna just watched him, impressed. He wasn't just a reader, he was a doer, a problem solver. He moved with a calm, methodical grace that was incredibly reassuring. After a few minutes, he found a loose connection on the battery. He pulled a small multi-tool from a pouch on his bike and tightened it with a few deft twists. "Try it now," he said, wiping a smudge of grease from his hand. She turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Anna laughed, a sound of pure relief. "Eric, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. What are you even doing way out here?" He pointed down the road with his chin. "There's a small community center a few kilometers away. I volunteer there sometimes on my day off. Help the kids with their reading and their sums." As they stood there, the last of the sun disappeared. It was quiet and cool, and in that moment of stillness, he told her about his dream. "It's not enough to just help a few kids with their fees," he said, his voice full of this quiet, burning passion that seemed to light him up from the inside. "One day I want to build a real foundation, a charity that gives kids from poor backgrounds a top-notch education. Not just the basics, but critical thinking, art, science. Everything they need to really lead, not just get by. I want to build schools where they feel safe and inspired, where they know they matter." Anna was captivated. He wasn't just talking about a building, he was describing a blueprint for hope. It was a vision that lined up perfectly with her own deepest dreams, to build things that actually mattered, not just fancy houses for rich people. Her admiration for him, which was already growing, started to feel a lot like something more, something deeper and warmer. This man, the gateman who fixed her car on a lonely road, was building his own kind of foundations, and they were stronger than anything she could ever design with steel and glass. That roadside rescue definitely shifted things between them. Their little chats at the gate now had this new, unspoken energy. A shared smile, a look that lasted a second too long. They were starting to speak a language without words. But in the Harrison house, secrets and whispers traveled fast, and nothing went unnoticed for long. The tension that had been bubbling since the pool party finally exploded at dinner one night. The family was sitting around the huge, polished table, the silence broken only by the clinking of silverware on expensive china. The mood was already stiff, but Ivy was about to make it a whole lot worse. "I saw you talking to the gateman again this morning, Anna," Ivy said, her voice sickly sweet, a sly little smile playing on her lips. "You seem to be spending a lot of time with him." Anna put her fork down, her back going rigid. "His name is Eric, and yes, we were talking. Is that a problem?" "The problem," Mrs. Harrison cut in, her voice as cold as ice, not even looking up from her plate, "is appearances. People talk. The Harrisons do not get familiar with the staff. It's unseemly." Anna felt a rush of hot anger. "Familiar? I was being respectful and courteous to another human being, something Ivy seems to have forgotten how to do." Ivy scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. I'm just saying it's weird. He's the gateman. What could you possibly have to talk about?" "And I'm an architect," Anna shot back, her voice rising, all pretense of a calm dinner gone. "Does my job mean I can't be kind to someone? We were talking about books, if you must know. He's read more than most of your friends, Ivy." Ivy's face tightened with anger. "At least my friends aren't hired help." But it was her mom who delivered the knockout punch. She finally looked at Anna, her expression one of deep, weary disappointment. "This isn't about kindness, Anna, and you know it. This is about your future, your reputation. You're a serious architect with a name to protect, the daughter of a wealthy man. You can't be seen getting close to a gateman. It sends the wrong message. It makes you look like you have bad judgment, that you're not serious about your station in life. Your father and I have invested too much in you, in your education, for you to throw it all away on some silly, sentimental idea." The room went dead silent. The lines had been drawn in permanent ink. This wasn't just about family image anymore. It was about Anna's career, her whole identity. The house felt split in two, not by walls, but by a huge gap of class and expectations. And Anna was on one side with Eric on the other, and the distance between them suddenly felt miles wide, an ocean she didn't know how to cross. Meanwhile, in a fancy wood-paneled office in the city, a whole other conversation was happening, one that held the key to everything. The man the Harrisons knew as Eric was sitting across from a sharp older lawyer. Here he wasn't Eric the gateman. He was Eric Owen, the one and only heir to a massive industrial fortune. The lawyer, Mr. Henry, a man who had served the Owen family for decades, looked at him over his glasses. "The year is almost up, Eric. November 15th, are you ready?" Eric, or Eric Owen, nodded with a heavy sigh, running a hand over his face. "I am." He was living a lie, but for a good reason. His late father, a brilliant but quirky man who'd built an empire from scratch, was terrified that all that money would ruin his son. He'd seen too many rich kids grow up soft and entitled. So his will had a crazy, non-negotiable rule. Before Eric could inherit a dime, he had to spend 1 full year working a menial job under a fake name, with zero access to his family's money. He had to learn what humility and a hard day's work really meant. Only Mr. Henry, the guy in charge of the will, knew the truth. "My father wanted me to understand where he came from," Eric said, looking off into the distance, his voice quiet. "He wanted me to see the dignity in all kinds of work, to know that a man's worth isn't in his bank account. And I have. I've learned more this past year than in all my years at university." He thought about the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, the camaraderie with the other staff, the simple pleasure of a cold drink after a long, hot day. "And the Harrison family?" Mr. Henry asked gently. "You've grown fond of them." It wasn't a question. Eric's mind immediately went to Anna. Her kindness, her smarts, her fierce sense of what was right. He'd taken the job at the Harrison estate by chance, but meeting her felt like fate. He was falling in love with her, not as Eric Owen, the rich heir, but as Eric, the gateman. And that was the problem. There is the eldest daughter, Anna, Eric admitted, his voice low. "She's not like the others. She really sees people, Mr. Henry. Not their status, but their character." He was terrified. The year was almost over. Soon the mask would have to come off. He was scared that the sudden truth of his wealth would destroy the real, honest connection he was building with Anna. Would she think he'd played her for a fool? Would the money just become a wall between them, changing the way she looked at him? He was afraid of losing the one person who saw him for who he really was, long before she could ever know the whole story. Back in her chic office with a view of the Lagos Lagoon, Anna was pouring her heart into a new set of blueprints. It was a pro bono project for a local NGO, a community learning center. It was just a small building, a library, a few classrooms, a workshop. But to Anna, it was the most important work she'd ever done. The design was more than just lines on a page. It was a shared dream, a quiet nod to the man who guarded her father's gate. She designed it with wide windows to let in the light, a central courtyard for kids to gather, and used local, sustainable materials that felt connected to the earth. She worked like a woman possessed, fueled by a new sense of mission. She could just picture kids reading in sunny corners, their worlds getting bigger with every page. This was architecture as an act of hope, a statement against the values her mother held so dear. Her focus was shattered when her mother swept into the office, trailing a cloud of expensive perfume. Mrs. Harrison glanced at the blueprints on Anna's desk with a look of disdain. "Still working on this community project?" she asked, making it sound like a silly hobby. "Anna, darling, I just had lunch with Mrs. Alakija. Her son is building a new luxury hotel in Echo Atlantic. She needs a world-class architect. This is the kind of client you should be chasing, not this." She waved a hand at the plans as if they were contaminated. And speaking of the right connections, the Alakia's nephew just got back from Harvard, an investment banker. I've set up dinner for you two on Friday. Don't be late. Anna took a deep breath, counting to 10 in her head. Mother, I'm not interested in the Alakia's nephew, and I'm proud of this project. It's meaningful work. It matters. Meaningful doesn't pay the bills, Anna. And it certainly doesn't help your reputation. Her mother shot back, her voice sharp. You need to be practical. You need to be seen with the right people, professionally and personally. This fixation you have with the lower classes is becoming worrying. It's not respectable. That last jab was aimed right at Eric. Anna's jaw clenched. My fixation, as you call it, is a belief that everyone deserves respect and a beautiful space to learn in. This learning center is my purpose. It's the kind of work I want to be known for. She turned back to her blueprints, a clear sign the conversation was over. As her mother left in a huff, muttering about ungrateful children, Anna looked at her design. It was a blueprint for a building, sure, but it was also a blueprint for her life, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even her own mother, force her to change it. That fear just wouldn't leave Eric alone. It was a cold, nagging worry that kept him up at night, twisting his stomach into knots. What if Anna's feelings for him were just pity? A kind of charity from a rich girl to a poor man? What if she was only drawn to him because he was so different from her world, a way to rebel against her parents? When the truth came out, when he was suddenly a man of immense wealth, would that fragile connection just snap? Would she feel betrayed? In a moment of real weakness, fueled by insecurity and a lifetime of seeing how money changes people, he made a decision he would come to regret. He decided to test her. He called his oldest friend, Kevin Adebayo. Kevin was one of those guys who just oozed charm and confidence, the kind that only comes from old money. He was everything Eric wasn't right now, polished, flashy, and a lover of the finer things in life. They met at a quiet lounge, the kind of place Eric hadn't been to in almost a year. It felt foreign and strange. I need you to do something for me, Eric said, his voice tight. There's a woman, Anna Harrison. I need you to get to know her. Kevin raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of his drink. Get to know her? Eric, what's this about? I thought you were living like a monk for a year. Don't tell me you've fallen for someone. Eric laid it all out, the will, the disguise, and the woman who had completely stolen his heart. I need to know if what she feels is real, he confessed, shame coloring his words. I need to know it isn't about this. He waved his hand around the fancy room. I want you to befriend her. Show her your world, the glamour, the money, see how she reacts. I just need to know her heart is true. Mr. Henry had been totally against the idea when Eric had floated it. Tests like this are a fool's errand, Eric, the old lawyer had warned him, his voice grave. They come from fear, not love. They have a way of poisoning the very thing you're trying to protect. If you don't trust her now, how will you ever trust her later? Just trust her. It's the only real foundation. But Eric's fear was louder than his faith. He ignored the lawyer's advice. With a heavy heart, he asked his friend to dangle a world of glamour and wealth in front of the woman he loved, just praying she wouldn't take the bait. It was a flawed, desperate plan that could cost him everything. Kevin Adebayo was smooth. He arranged to bump into Anna at a fancy art gallery opening she was at with her mother. He was charming, witty, and dressed to kill. Mrs. Harrison was instantly impressed. Finally, a suitable young man. She practically pushed Anna into his arms. Kevin invited Anna for drinks the next evening, an invitation her mother happily accepted for her. The lounge was all hushed tones and gleaming surfaces, a real power broker spot where deals were made over eye-wateringly expensive cocktails. Kevin talked about his recent trip to Monaco for the Grand Prix, art auctions in Geneva, and business deals that crossed continents. He was a great storyteller, and for a while, Anna was entertained. It was like watching a movie. But as the night went on, she started to feel an emptiness in it all. Kevin's stories were all about what he owned or what he'd bought. He talked a lot, but he didn't really listen. When she talked about her community center project, his eyes glazed over. He was bright and engaging, but he never seemed to truly see her. He just saw an architect from a good family, a pretty woman to charm, another trophy for his collection. Her mind kept wandering back to Eric. She thought about their talks in the garden, how he would listen so intently, asking thoughtful questions, like her words were the most important thing in the world. She remembered the passion in his voice when he talked about books and his dream for the children. Eric's world had substance, purpose, and a quiet depth. Kevin's world, for all its sparkle, felt shallow, like a beautiful hollow shell. The more Kevin tried to impress her with the glitter of his life, the more she missed the simple, honest sincerity of the man at the gate. The difference was crystal clear. One man was offering her the world on a silver platter. The other had shown her his heart, and Anna was starting to realize which one was priceless. A few days later, Kevin invited Anna for tea in the gardens of a fancy hotel. It was a perfect afternoon, with manicured lawns and the gentle tinkle of a fountain in the background. This was it, the moment he was supposed to gently test her intentions. After some pleasant small talk about the weather and a new restaurant, he leaned in, his expression turning serious. "Anna," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "can I be honest with you? I've seen the way you look at that Gateman at your house." Anna immediately put her guard up, her posture stiffening. "What about him?" "He seems like a nice guy," Kevin went on, choosing his words carefully. "But you have to be realistic. You're a Harrison. You're a brilliant architect with a huge future. Can he really give you the life you deserve? A life of security, of travel, of influence. A man should be able to provide for you, to elevate you." The question just hung there, a direct challenge. Anna looked at Kevin, at his expensive suit and his perfectly serious face, and it all became so clear. He just didn't get it. He was measuring a man's worth by the size of his wallet. She met his gaze, her voice steady and sure, without a trace of doubt. "What you call the life I deserve is just things, Kevin. It's a lifestyle. It's not a life. Eric has something that can't be bought. He has integrity. He has a purpose that's bigger than himself. He has a good heart. He listens. He cares." She paused, a small, confident smile on her lips. "And to me, Eric's heart is worth more than all the money in the world." You couldn't miss the sincerity in her voice. There was no hesitation, no doubt. It was the simple, honest truth. It was the foundation she wanted to build her life on. Later that day, Kevin met up with Eric. He told him exactly what she'd said, his usual playful vibe gone, replaced by genuine respect. "She didn't even blink, man," Kevin said, shaking his head in admiration. "She's the real deal. You're a lucky guy. Don't mess this up." A wave of relief so powerful it almost knocked Eric over washed through him. She was true. Her heart was pure. The shame he felt about the test was instantly replaced by the humbling, overwhelming certainty of her love. That relief quickly turned into a sense of urgency. The test was over. The lies had to stop. Eric knew he couldn't let another day go by without telling Anna everything. The secret he'd been carrying for so long, which had once felt like a duty to his father, now just felt like a heavy, dishonest weight. He spent the evening pacing his small room, his mind racing, a jumble of hope and fear. How would he start? Where would he tell her? He practiced the words over and over, trying to figure out how to explain his dad's crazy will without sounding like he'd been playing some cruel, elaborate game. "Anna, I have to tell you something. My name isn't just Eric." No. Too blunt. It sounded like the start of a bad movie. "The last year of my life has been an act, but my feelings for you are the only real thing in it." Way too dramatic. She'd laugh at him. He decided to just be simple and honest. That's what she valued after all. He'd find a quiet place, away from her family, and just lay the truth out for her. He'd tell her about his dad, the will, his fears about wealth, and how much he loved her. He'd have to ask her to forgive him for the deception and for that stupid, insulting test with Kevin. That part would be the hardest. He planned to ask her to meet him the next evening at a quiet park by the lagoon, a neutral spot where they could talk freely, where he wasn't the gate man and she wasn't the boss's daughter. He felt a nervous flutter in his chest, a mix of terror and excitement. He was about to risk it all, to put his heart and his identity on the line, but the thought of a future with her, a future built on truth, gave him the courage he needed. The show was over. It was time for Eric Owen to finally meet the woman he loved. Ivy Harrison had always been nosy, and when you added jealousy to the mix, she got downright suspicious. She'd seen the fancy car that picked Eric up a few days ago, a discreet sedan with tinted windows that definitely didn't belong to a Gateman. She'd noticed how his way of talking on the phone changed sometimes, becoming more formal and commanding. She was sure the Gateman was not who he said he was, and she was going to find out his secret. Her chance came one quiet afternoon. Mr. Henry had come to the estate to meet with Eric, and they were talking in a secluded part of the garden, thinking they were alone. But Ivy was hiding behind a big hibiscus bush, her phone recording, listening to every single word. "The portfolio has performed exceptionally well this quarter," Mr. Henry was saying, his voice low but clear. "The investments in the tech sector have matured. We need your signature to authorize the next phase of diversification into international markets." Investments? Portfolio? That was not how a simple Gateman talked. Ivy's heart started pounding. She was shocked and thrilled at the same time. She was right. He was living a double life. In her mind, there was only one explanation. He was a fraud, a con man, probably running some kind of scam, taking advantage of her family and, even worse, her naive sister. She didn't stick around to hear more. She ran back to the house, her mind racing, her heart filled with a sense of vindicated fury. She burst into the lounge where her mother was reading a magazine.
"Mother, you will not believe what I just heard!" she yelled dramatically. "The Gateman! He's a criminal! I heard him talking about investments and portfolios. He's a con artist, I know it. He's probably trying to scam us."
For Mrs. Harrison, this was all the proof she needed. Her warnings had been ignored, and now her worst fears were coming true. The man wasn't just unsuitable, he was dangerous. "I knew it," she said, her voice a low, cold whisper, her face pale. "I knew there was something wrong with that man." Her objections, which had started with snobbery, now hardened into a belief that she was protecting her daughter from a predator. The battle lines were drawn. Ivy's discovery was a weapon, and she couldn't wait to use it. But she needed a partner in crime, someone who also wanted Eric gone. She found one in Chris Bancoli, a family friend who'd always thought he should be with Anna. Chris, a slick banker with a fragile ego, had been watching Anna and the Gateman with a mix of disbelief and wounded pride. Ivy met him for coffee and laid out her evidence. "He's a con man, Chris," she said, her eyes wide with manufactured concern. "And Anna is completely fooled. We have to do something to protect her." Together they were a toxic team. They didn't have the full story, so they just made one up, twisting Ivy's snippets of conversation into a full-blown narrative of deceit. They started planting little seeds of gossip all over Lagos high society, dropping hints at parties and lunches. The story they spun was nasty. Eric was a cunning opportunist who was playing a long game to get Anna's money. And Anna? She was either a naive rich girl falling for his act, or worse, a gold digger herself, trying to look good by saving a man from the gutter. The whispers spread like wildfire at dinner parties and polo matches. "Did you hear about the Harrison girl? She's obsessed with their Gateman. They say he has her wrapped around his little finger. It's just a cry for attention, so embarrassing for the family." The rumors even got back to the NGO Anna was working with, making things awkward with the board members. The poison was working. Doubt started to creep in everywhere. Even Eric, who knew the truth, felt a flicker of that old fear. What if people believed he was a manipulator? The lies were like a twisted, funhouse mirror version of his own deception, and it made him sick. The trap Ivy and Chris had set was tightening, ready to choke the life out of Anna and Eric's relationship before it ever had a chance. The annual reception for the Nigerian Business Arts Council was the social event of the year. It was the place to be seen, to make deals, and to build or break reputations. The Harrisons were there, of course. Mrs. Harrison was in her element, networking furiously. Ivy was showing off her new dress, and Anna just felt out of place, with the weight of all the rumors pressing down on her. She'd tried to ignore the whispers and the weird looks, but it was starting to get to her. Eric had tried to set up their talk, but with the reception happening, they'd agreed to meet afterwards. Now, she wished they had talked sooner. The party was in full swing when a new guest arrived. He walked into the ballroom, and the whole room went quiet. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored jacket that screamed bespoke, and moved with this calm, confident energy that drew every eye. Heads turned, whispers started. Anna's heart just stopped. She knew that posture, that steady gaze. It was Eric. But it wasn't Eric the gateman. This was a man who belonged in this room, who looked more comfortable than anyone else there. He walked straight up to the chairman of the council, who greeted him with a warm, deferential handshake. "Eric, my boy, we were wondering if you'd make it. It's been too long." The chairman then turned to the crowd, his voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know him, allow me to introduce Mr. Eric Owen of Owen Industries." The name hit the room like a bomb. Owen Industries, one of the most powerful and private family companies in West Africa. The shock was real, and then every single eye in the room turned to Anna. The gossip immediately exploded, twisting into something even uglier. So that's what it was about. She knew all along. That clever girl, she went for the biggest prize of all. Anna stood there frozen, the room spinning. She felt hundreds of eyes on her, judging her, dissecting her. The man she was falling in love with was a total stranger, an heir to a fortune, and their story, which had felt so pure, was now being painted as some kind of sordid, calculated plan. Through all the noise, Eric's eyes found hers. They were filled with apology, regret, and a desperate plea for her to understand. The aftermath of the reception was swift and brutal. The next morning, you could cut the tension in the Harrison house with a knife. But before the family could have it out, a call came from Mr. Henry's office, requesting a meeting. In the lawyer's office, the whole truth finally came out. Mr. Henry, a man who didn't mess around, had done his own digging. He'd traced the rumors right back to their source. He calmly presented the proof. Phone records of calls between Chris and known gossips, a printout of a text message, and a statement from one of Ivy's friends who'd overheard them cooking up the whole story and felt guilty. The evidence was undeniable. Ivy and Chris were behind the whole smear campaign. Armed with this, Anna's shock turned into a cold, hard anger. She drove straight to Chris Bankoli's office. She didn't yell. She didn't have to. She just hit him with the facts, her voice like ice. "You tried to destroy my reputation and hurt a man you know nothing about, all because your ego got bruised. You are not the man I thought you were, Chris. I never want to see you again." He completely fell apart, stammering apologies, unable to even look at her. Her next meeting was with Eric. He was waiting for her at the park, looking absolutely miserable. He started talking before she could say a word. "Anna, I am so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For the disguise, for not telling you sooner, and most of all, for the test. For ever letting a shadow of a doubt about your heart cross my mind. It was my fear, my weakness, and it was unforgivable. I should have trusted you." She looked at him, at the genuine regret in his eyes, and her anger started to melt. He'd been a fool, but he hadn't been cruel. His fear had made him do a stupid thing, but his heart was in the right place. "You should have trusted me, Eric," she said softly, her voice aching. "I know," he whispered, taking a step closer. "I will spend the rest of my life earning that trust, if you'll let me." They stood there in silence for a moment. There was still a gap between them, a hurt that needed to heal, but it didn't feel impossible to cross anymore. "We need to talk to my father," Anna said finally, "and my mother, and Ivy. We need to clear the air once and for all." They agreed. The time for secrets and lies was over. It was time to face the music. The Harrison family gathered in the formal living room, and the tension was off the charts. Mr. Harrison sat at the head of the room, his face like thunder. Mrs. Harrison was a statue of disapproval, and Ivy just fidgeted, unable to look at anyone, looking small and guilty. Anna sat right next to Eric, a silent show of support. Eric started talking, his voice steady and clear. He explained everything, his father's will, the year of humility, and what he'd learned. He talked about the simple dignity he'd found in a hard day's work. Then he turned to Anna. "I fell in love with your daughter," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "Not as an heir, but as a man trying to find his way. Her heart, her integrity, and her compassion are the greatest treasures I have ever found. My intentions are, and have always been, honorable." Then, Mr. Henry laid out the evidence against Ivy and Chris. The silence was deafening. Mr. Harrison looked at his youngest daughter, his face a mask of pure disappointment. "You did this? You spread these lies about your own sister?" Ivy just burst into tears, a messy, ugly cry. "I was jealous," she sobbed. "Anna has everything, her career, her confidence, and then she had him, and he was kind and smart, and I hated it." Chris Bancoli, who'd been called to the meeting, tried to make excuses, but Mr. Harrison just waved him away, kicking him out of their house and their lives for good. Chris scurried off, his reputation in shreds. The focus went back to the family. Mr. Harrison, a man who cared more about character than anything, looked from his weeping daughter to the calm, dignified man next to his eldest. He saw the truth. He stood up, walked over to Eric and held out his hand. "Mr. Owen," he said firmly, "you have my respect, and you have my blessing." All eyes turned to Mrs. Harrison. She'd been listening to everything, and her icy posture was starting to thaw. She really looked at her daughter and saw not a rebellious girl making a mistake, but a strong, happy woman. She saw the integrity in Eric's eyes. She realized her own ambition for Anna had blinded her to what Anna truly wanted. With a slow nod, she gave her consent. "Be happy, Anna," she whispered, her voice cracking just a little. The house, once so divided, was finally starting to feel whole again. A few weeks later, Eric took Anna to a dusty plot of land on the edge of the city. It was the site for the community learning center she'd been designing. The blueprints she had poured her heart into were about to become real. "I bought the land," Eric said simply, "and I'm funding the entire project, the Owen Foundation's first official initiative, a partnership between your design and my dream." Anna's eyes filled with tears. It was the most perfect, meaningful thing he could have done. It was a promise that their future would be built on the very values that had brought them together. They walked around the site, kicking up red dust, as she pointed out where the library and classrooms would go, where kids would one day learn and dream. In the spot she'd marked for a small garden, Eric stopped. He took both of her hands. "Anna Harrison," he began, his voice full of a love that felt as solid as the ground they were standing on. "You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I had nothing. You are the foundation of my life." He got down on one knee, holding out a simple, elegant ring, not a giant diamond, but something tasteful and beautiful. "I want to build a life with you, a life of purpose, of service, of love. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, she said yes. Later that week, Anna was sitting with her mom on the veranda. The awkwardness between them was gone, replaced by a new, fragile understanding. "He's a good man, Anna," Mrs. Harrison said quietly. "I was wrong. I was so focused on the life I thought you should have. I didn't see the beautiful life you were building for yourself." It was an apology and a new beginning, healing a wound Anna hadn't realized was still there. Their wedding wasn't the huge, flashy party Mrs. Harrison would have once planned. It was a sweet, joyful ceremony on a beautiful beach, with the ocean as their soundtrack. Eric's family, who had been kept in the dark for a year, were warm and welcoming, embracing Anna immediately. They were down-to-earth people who were just happy to see their son so in love. The biggest surprise at the wedding was Ivy. In the weeks after the family showdown, she had really started to change. Facing what she'd done had forced her to grow up. On the wedding day, she stood up and gave a public, heartfelt apology to her sister and new brother-in-law. She had even helped plan the whole celebration, her energy now focused on making things right. As the sun set over the ocean, Eric and Anna made a pledge. Their marriage would be a partnership with a purpose. Her architectural genius and his philanthropic vision would come together. They would launch a foundation to build schools, community centers, and libraries all over the country. Their story became a kind of local legend. It was the story of the Gateman who was secretly a prince, and the architect who saw the king inside him. But more than that, it was a story that proved that character is more important than class, that true love can survive anything, and that humility is the strongest foundation of all. Their love, born between two different worlds, became a bridge that brought hope to many.